Mandalorian. Season 2. Season 2. Episode 1. Chapter 9. The Marshal. Open on Mando walking with the child to meet with Gor Koresh. John Leguizamo, who has information on the location of another Mandalorian who can help him return the child to its own kind. However, it was a setup as Gor merely wanted his Beskar armor. Mando kills all of Gor's henchmen and manages to get the location of the other Mandalorian, on Tatooine in the city of Mos Pelgo. Mando leaves him hanging for the creatures of the night. They fly to Tatooine and land at Peli Motto's garage. Mando decides to leave the Razor Crest with Peli, Amy Sedaris, for repairs. He asks her where Mos Pelgo is, and she tells him it is an old mining settlement far away from Mos Eisley. She tells him it would not be safe to fly his ship out there. He asks to borrow her speeder bike. He takes the child across the desert with him to Mos Pelgo. Along the way, they camp with a small group of Tusken Sand people. The two arrive in town just like an old western. All the townsfolk come out to their doors to see the strangers setting foot in their faraway town. Mando stops into an empty saloon and asks the bartender if he has seen anyone who looks like him. The bartender tells him that the only other person in town with armor like his is the Marshal. A man then arrives wearing Boba Fett's armor. He offers Mando a drink, sits down, and immediately removes his helmet. He tells Mando that his name is Cobb Vanth Timothy Oliphant. He bought the armor from some Jawas. Enraged, Mando demands he remove the armor or he will kill him. Not one to be intimidated in his own town, Cobb prepares for a standoff. But the earth suddenly quakes. Outside, the people are running to their homes to get indoors and the source of the quake draws closer. It is giant sand leviathan that charges through the town's sand road and eats a bantha before leaving. Cobb tells Mando it is a crate dragon. The Mandalorian armor has helped Cobb to protect the town from invaders. And if Mando helps THM to kill the crate dragon, he will relinquish the armor to him. Mando accepts. Cobb takes Mando to the cave where the creature dwells. Along the way, Cobb retells how the story of the fall of the Galactic Empire was widespread. But immediately after the news broke, with no further Imperial interference, Mos Pelgo's mining collective took over and turned the town into a slave colony. As he escaped that night, Cobb grabbed the only thing he could, a container from a mining vehicle. After wandering the desert, Cobb faints but is picked up by Jawas, who give him water and open the container. It had silicox crystals in it, which he exchanged to them for the Mandalorian armor he saw hanging on their display. Afterward, he returned to Mos Pelgo and used the armor to take out the mining collective single-handedly. From that day on, he was the Marshal of Mos Pelgo. As they approach an underpass between cliffs, a pack of womp dogs surround them. Mando calls out in the Tusken language, and the owners reveal themselves. He finds out that they want to slay the dragon as well, and they can take them to its lair. While camping, a Tusken offers Cobb a cactus drink, which Cobb refuses. Though angry with each other, Mando explains that fighting amongst themselves will only get them all killed. The next morning, they stake out at the dragon's lair, an abandoned Sarlacc cave. The dragon only comes out to eat. The sooner it eats, the sooner it retreats back to its cave. The Tuskens bring a bantha to the cave so it can eat as soon as it comes out. But the dragon eats the Tusken instead. Mando suggests a different plan. While strategizing a plan, Cobb realizes the dragon is much larger than he had thought. Mando suggests having more people to shoot at the dragon to get it to charge out of its cave. Cobb asks where those numbers are coming from. Mando tells him he volunteered the citizens of Mos Pelgo. They return to prepare the people. Enraged at the idea of working with the Tuskens, who constantly raid their town, the people of Mos Pelgo refuse. Mando explains that he brokered an agreement with the Tuskens that if they succeed in slaying the dragon, no Tusken will raise a blaster against the town unless you shoot first. They reluctantly agree. At the dragon's lair, the team plant charges in the sand in an effort to blow up the dragon from underneath. Once that is done, 2 Tuskens call into the cave to wake the dragon and draw it out. Unfortunately, it eats one of them and begins to retreat. The townsfolk begin shooting at the dragon, enraging it to come out further. It makes it far enough to blow the charges just as it spits burning green venom from its mouth. The charges do not even pierce its underbelly, and the dragon burrows through to the top of the mountain. Cobb and Mando take to the air to engage it while the ones on the ground scramble. Unsure of what to do, Mando notices a bantha carrying explosives and gets an idea. He has Cobb launch his rocket to get the dragon's attention, then launches him by setting off one of his jets. Mando lets the dragon eat him and the bantha as the dragon disappears underground, but then shows up once again as Mando flies out of the mouth. Using his stun bayonet to generate an electric shield around himself. Once out of the dragon, he detonates the explosives, killing the dragon. All are saved, and only 2 banthas got killed. Cobb returns the armor to Mando and wishes him well. Mando heads back to Peli Motto. As an older figure watches from above, a mark on the character's head matching the dent on the Mandalorian helmet is indicative that he is Boba Fett. Season 2, Episode 2, Chapter 10, The Passenger. On the way back from Mos Pelgo, Mando and the child are ambushed by several bounty hunters. They destroy his speeder bike, but are picked off one by one. The last one holds the child hostage and offers to exchange it for Mando's jetpack. He agrees and makes the exchange. As the bounty hunter runs away, Mando remotely activates the jetpack from his right unit and sends the hunter flying. The jetpack returns to Mando alone. He continues on foot back to Mos Eisley. Mando returns to Mos Eisley with Fett's armor, and no information about the location of another Mandalorian. He meets with Peli Motto in the cantina. She is gambling against Dr. Mandible, a human-size ant. He has a contact who can tell him where to find some Mandalorians. As they cook the crate dragon meat, Peli returns to inform Mando that a Mandalorian covert is nearby in the same sector. It is unknown if this is one of the Mandalorians who survived Navarro. In return for this information, the contact requests passage to the system on the Razor Crest, and they must be transported without using hyperdrive. Mando reluctantly agrees, and is introduced to the passenger, a humanoid amphibian, called Frog Lady, on screen. She is transporting her eggs to her husband on the estuary moon of Trask in the gas giant Kola Ben, so that they can be fertilized. If they are transported through hyperspace, they will die. She says that her husband has seen Mandalorians on Trask. The crew board the ship and leave Tatooine. With no light speed, Mando sets the course for Trask and gets ready to rest while the child secretly indulges in eating one of the passengers' eggs. Mando scolds the child and takes him for his nap. He wakes up to an alarm as 2 X-Wing fighters approach and demand he activate his transponder. Mando attempts to deflect the requirement under New Republic jurisdiction, but is asked to send a ping to help them sweep for Imperial holdouts. Mando sends the ping, and the X-Wings lock into attack formation. They found out about his involvement with the extraction of the prisoner in Chapter 6. He is ordered to follow them to their command post. Mando flees to a nearby ice planet. The pilots threaten to fire on him if he does not stand down. Mando manages to lose the X-Wings, but crashes into an underground ice cave. Mando and the passenger wake up and notice the damage to the ship. Mando explains that they will fix the hole in the ship in the morning. The passenger objects, but since Mando does not understand her, they cannot communicate. The passenger uses an inactive bounty hunter droid to interpret her language to Mando. She explains that these eggs are the last of her life cycle, and the last of her species. Trask is the only planet that is hospitable to her species. Their predicament cannot wait until morning as the time for her eggs to be fertilized is limited. Mando goes out and works on the ship. The passenger takes a trip into the caves and finds a hot spring where she places her eggs to keep them warm. Mando finds her and demands that they leave the cave immediately. At the same time, the child discovers one of many eggs in the cave. He opens it up to reveal a baby ice spider, which he eats. At that point, all the eggs begin hatching and hundreds of ice spiders appear. The spiders chase the three back to the crest and hold them up inside. As it looks to be at its worst, the spiders begin taking shots from an unseen source. When it is safe enough for him to go outside, Mando sees that it is the two X-Wing pilots who had tracked his location. After taking out the last one, the pilots explain that even though Mando had illegally abducted the prisoner, he also apprehended 3 culprits from the wanted register, and protected a Correctional Corps lieutenant, while he should be arrested. The pilots concede that, these are trying times, and allow Mando to fly freely once he fixes his transponder. Mando fixes up the ship enough to get it to space. The 3 head for Trask with the passenger lovingly clutching her remaining brood as the child consumes one last egg. Season 2. Episode 3. Chapter 11. The Heiress. On their way to Trask, an alarm wakes up the 3 in the cockpit. Without the automatic landing feature, Mando drops the crest into the planet's orbit manually and has the passenger hold a lever to keep the ship stable. The crest lands in the bay. The crest is hoisted out of the bay and Mando asks a Mon Calamari dock worker to fix it. The worker says he can only make it fly. The passenger finds her husband, who directs Mando to an inn when asked about others of his kind. Mando and the child arrive and sit down. He asks the waiter if he knows of others like him. The waiter says he knows someone who might help. A Quarren sits and tells Mando he can sail him to others of his kind. Mando takes to the sea with a crew led by the Quarren's brother. On their way, the captain shows Mando and the child the feeding of a Mammacore creature in the ship's hold. He then knocks the child and Mando into the Mammacore cell in order to get the Beskar armor. A trio in Mandalorian armor arrive and save them. While Mando is speaking to them, the 3 remove their helmets. The leader, Bo-Katan, Katie Sackhoff, tells him that the armor has been in her family for generations. She is of Clan Kryze, born on Mandalore and a fighter in the Purge. She identifies Mando as a child of the Watch, which she calls a cult of religious zealots that broke away from modern Mandalorian society to re-establish the ancient way. Mando says that the only way is the way of the Mandalore. Before taking off in disgust, the 3 leave and destroy the ship while Mando returns to the town. Still without information about other Mandalorians, Quarren ambushes Mando and the child for killing his brother. Again the trio saves them and offers to at least buy him a drink. In the cantina, Bo-Katan explains their rebellion so that she may take her throne to re-establish Mandalore. Mando tells her that he is returning the child to the Jedi. She tells him she can lead him to a Jedi. But they need his help to steal a shipment of weapons from an Imperial freighter before it can leave the planet's atmosphere. Mando agrees and leaves the child with the passenger and her husband. He watches as an egg starts to hatch. The four attack the freighter, easily taking out stormtroopers with little assist from Mando. The commander, Titus Welliver, orders the pilots to begin climbing before leaving the atmosphere. He orders the troops on the lower deck cargo hold to hold the Mandalorians off until they can make the jump to hyperspace. The Mandalorians are trapped in the cargo control area, where they immediately open the hatch and suck all the troops out into the air. Bo-Katan has a radio standoff with the commander and tells him that they are taking the ship. Much to Mando's surprise, she tells Mando that she needs something if she is to rule Mandalore, and the commander knows where it is. When he tells her she has changed the terms of the deal, she smiles at him and says, "This is the way." As the three walk off and don their helmets, Mando looks on with deep suspicion. The commander speaks to Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito, and requests backup. Moff Gideon tells him that backup is not an option, and tells the commander he knows what to do. "Long live the Empire," Gideon says. The commander nods his head, kills both pilots, and steers the ship into a kamikaze nosedive. With significant altitude loss, the four are being held off by several stormtroopers. Mando runs toward the stormtroopers, taking several hits, and manages to throw 2 grenades at them, taking them all out. The four make it to the cockpit and subdue the commander long enough to level the ship. Bo-Katan demands the location of the Darksaber. The commander tells her she knows where it is. She demands Moff Gideon's location. The commander bites down on an electric capsule and dies. With no more threats and their mission complete, Mando demands the location of the Jedi. She tells him to take the child to the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus, where he will meet Ahsoka Tano. She tells him to drop her name and thanks him for his bravery. When she says, "This is the way," Mando now appropriately responds, "This is the way." Mando leaves the ship on his jetpack and returns to pick up the child. The passenger and her husband marvel at their newborn. Mando returns to a barely repaired ship. As they begin to leave, an octopus-like creature crawls out of nowhere and descends on the child. But Mando catches it, kills it, and feeds it to him. The crest jumps to light speed. Season 2, Episode 4, Chapter 12, The Siege. The Razor Crest stalls in space, and Mando and the child work together to start up the engine again. They fail. Mando decides to make a pit stop on Navarro to have the ship repaired. On Navarro, a cantina is being robbed. Cara Dune stops them. A meerkat creature imprints on Cara for saving it, but she leaves it some food as she leaves. Mando arrives en Navarro and manages to land the ship. He is greeted by Cara and Grief Karga, Carl Weathers, who orders the repairs be done, and Mando's chip and gleefully greets the child, who saved his life in Chapter 9. As they walk through town, Grief and Cara show Mando how it has changed since the stormtroopers left. Cara is now Marshal Dune, and a school is open, where lessons are being taught by a 3PO droid. Grief seats the child in the classroom in front of a girl with hair like Ray. The child is intrigued by a classmate's snacks. The classmate refuses to share. So the child uses the force to take the snacks. Grief takes Mando to see Mithril, the first bounty of the series, who is now working off his debt as Grief's bookkeeper. Kara asks that they speak business. Mando only wishes to repair his ship, which Grief says means he will have free time to help them with a mission. Kara shows him the location of an old Imperial base. It has a skeleton crew but not abandoned. Grief wants the base taken out so that Navarro can become a trade anchor for the sector. And the planet would be safe and free from the Empire. Mithril drives them out to the lava canyons on his speeder. Mando flies up and takes out a stormtrooper to activate the elevator. Mithril reluctantly joins Kara and Grief under fear of the lava tide and bribed with extra time served. When they arrive at the top, they discover that Mando has taken out another stormtrooper, while Mithril marvels at the Imperial vessels that could sell high on the black market. Mando reminds him that they are there to destroy the base and everything in it. The four continue into the base, where an Imperial officer is attempting to communicate with the two troopers in the shuttle bay that Mando just took out. Kara puts him to sleep in a chokehold. Mando shuts off all camera feeds. And Grief takes a code cylinder from the officer, saying it will come in handy. Mando leads them to the access corridor to the heat shaft. They pass by two stormtroopers, but do not engage them. Grief has Mithril use the code cylinder to open the door. They walk in over an active lava pit. Grief orders Mithril to drain the coolant lines. Mithril comments on how there is no guardrail. He uses the code cylinder to drain the coolant lines, which aggravates the lava. He tells them, "She's gonna blow. We gotta get out of here." The four make their way through, avoiding stormtroopers where they can. They encounter two Imperial scientists purging the drives, who draw on them. One yells to the other, "Destroy it." The other scientist shoots the control panel as Mando. Grief and Kara shoot at the scientists, taking them both out. They manage to enter the science vault. They see several bodies suspended in stasis pods. Kara determines that the base was not military, but a lab. Mando comments that he doesn't like this. Mithril accesses a recording of Dr. Pershing from Chapter 2, relaying to Moff Gideon that he could only draw so much blood from the child without killing it. This reveals to Mando that Gideon is still alive and after the child. So he rushes back to get him, leaving Grief, Kara, and Mithril to save themselves. As they escape on an Imperial transporter that destroys Mithril's speeder, several TIE fighters attack as the base is overrun with lava and is destroyed. The TIEs take out the transporter's deck shooter, but the three are saved by Mando in the fully repaired Razor Crest with the child safely strapped in, still eating the cookies from school. As Grief thanks Mando for his bravery, Kara is approached by a rebel fighter who served on Alderaan. He encourages her to enlist, but she turns him down. As Mando and the child depart en route to Corvus, a transmission is sent to an Imperial starship, where the commanding officer relays to Moff Gideon that the homing beacon was successfully installed on the crest and transmitting. As Gideon anticipates recapturing the child, he looks out at two rows of clones in armor like that of Darth Vader. Season 2, Episode 5, Chapter 13, The Jedi. On the planet Corvus, the gated city of Caladan is under tyrannical rule by the magistrate Morgan Elspeth, Diana Lee Inosanto, and her personal guard Lang, Michael B.N. An alarm is sounded as the Jedi Ahsoka Tano approaches and demands information from the magistrate. She gives her until tomorrow to consider. Mando and the child arrive on Corvus and land outside of Caladan. As they leave, Mando notices that the child used the Force to twist the ball from the top of the crest's gear shift again. He puts it in his pocket. And they continue. At the city gate, he tells Lang he is there seeking a Jedi. He cautiously admits him. Mando is told by a villager, Wing Tao Chong, not to speak to anyone in the city. Mando is swiftly approached by guards who take him to the magistrate and the villager. Suspiciously, Mando arrives at the magistrate's water garden, where she presents him with a spear of pure Beskar as payment after he kills Ahsoka Tano. Mando asks where he can find her. Upon leaving, Lang inquires about the child. Mando says he keeps it for luck. Lang tells him he will need that when facing Ahsoka. Mando departs with the child. Upon encountering her, after a brief struggle in which his Beskar armor blocks the energy of the two white lightsabers, Mando identifies her as Ahsoka Tano and tells her he was sent by Bo-Katan. She immediately inquires about the child. After sitting with him for some time, Ahsoka uses the Force to see the child's past and is able to tell Mando several things about his origins. The child's name is Grogu. He was raised in a Jedi temple on Coruscant, but hidden away when the Empire rose to power. She comments on his likeness to Master Yoda. Ahsoka and Mando work to train Grogu in using the Force. While he does not respond well to Ahsoka's teaching, Mando is able to get through to him using the ball from his ship. Ahsoka tells Mando that she cannot train Grogu, and that she worries that his fear to use the Force could corrupt him as it did Darth Vader. With little recourse, Mando agrees to help Ahsoka take out the magistrate and free the city. Ahsoka approaches the gate, takes out the guards, and enters the city. She throws down a piece of Mando's Beskar armor and tells them he failed. After taking out several guards and droids, Ahsoka makes it to the garden gate, where Mando, with help from the villager, flanks Lang and his men long enough for Ahsoka to confront the magistrate. Mando and Lang stand off outside. The magistrate uses the Beskar spear to fight Ahsoka, but ultimately loses before Mando takes out Lang. Ahsoka demands the location of the magistrate's master, Grand Admiral Thrawn. The city is freed, and the villager who helped Mando is anointed Governor Wing. At the gate, Ahsoka gives Mando the spear, saying it belongs with a Mandalorian. Mando promises to bring Grogu back to say goodbye. When he arrives back at the crest, Grogu is fast asleep. Mando stays with him until he wakes up. Outside the ship, Ahsoka comments that Mando is like a father to Grogu. She repeats that she cannot train him, but tells him where he can find the ruins of an old temple on the planet Tython. Upon placing him at the Seeing Stone at the top of the mountain, Grogu will choose his path in the Force. If he reaches out, there is a chance a surviving Jedi may sense his presence and come searching for him. Mando thanks her. She says, "May the Force be with you." Mando and Grogu depart, en route to Tython while Ahsoka returns to Caladan. Season 2. Episode 6. 14. The Tragedy. The Razor Crest arrives at the planet Tython. Mando looks over at Grogu as he plays with the ball from the gearshift. He marvels with pride at Grogu's recognition to his own name and his ability to use the Force to pull the ball back to him. When they arrive on Tython, Mando sees the mountain Ahsoka Tano told him about in Chapter 13. He decides to land the crest and fly Grogu there by jetpack. They approach the site and Mando places Grogu on the Seeing Stone. Nothing happens at first, but as a butterfly comes to Grogu, Mando sees the slave eye enter the atmosphere. At that point, Grogu begins to reach out through the Force. Mando sees Boba Fett leave the slave eye. After a brief exchange of gunfire, Fett reveals that Fennec survived Chapter 5 and has her sights set on Grogu. Mando agrees to stand down if they do the same. Fett tells him that he does not want bloodshed. All he wants is his armor back, and admits that he is not Mandalorian. Mando tells him that he is therefore not worthy of the armor. They discuss Fennec's survival with some cybernetic guts inserted by Fett. He tells Mando that the bounty on Grogu's head has gone up significantly. 2 Imperial shuttles arrives carrying dozens of stormtroopers. Mando rushes to get Grogu, but he cannot get past the force field. Fett easily takes out several stormtroopers using his warhammer-like spear. Fennec holds others off, eventually destroying their machine gun blaster with a boulder. Unopposed, Fett heads for the open Razor Crest. Mando tries again to get Grogu, but to no avail. Grogu finally finishes communing through the Force and goes to sleep. Mando helps Fennec push back the stormtroopers before Fett arrives in his armor and takes him out. The remaining stormtroopers retreat to their shuttles and fly back. Fett uses his rocket, replenished off-screen since Chapter 9, and manages to take out both shuttles. He tells Mando they were not what he was aiming for. Above the clouds, an unseen vessel fires a single shot at the Razor Crest, annihilating it. Above, in the Imperial starship, Moff Gideon asks if the Dark Troopers have been engaged. The commander confirms 4 dark bipedal droids depart from the ship and fly to Grogu's location. Mando and Fennec do not make it in time to stop them. Fett pursues the Dark Troopers in the Slave Eye, and tells Fennec, the Empire has returned, upon seeing the ship. In the wreckage of the Razor Crest, Mando recovers 2 items, Grogu's ball, and the Beskar spear. Fett shows Mando the armor's history of ownership, and that it belonged to his father Jango Fett. Mando realizes his father was a foundling who fought in the Mandalorian civil wars. Mando tells them that their business is complete, but Fett disagrees. They had agreed to keep Grogu safe from harm in exchange for the armor. Until he is safe, Fett and Fennec are, by code, in Mando's service. The 3 fly to Navarro, where Mando speaks with newly appointed Marshal Cara Dune. He asks her about Migs Mayfield from Chapter 6. He believes Mayfield can help him find Moff Gideon. He tells her that the Empire has Grogu. Although she realizes the enormity of the problem, she reminds Mando of her responsibility to her new duties as Marshal. On Moff Gideon's ship, Grogu uses the Force to hold off 2 stormtroopers in his cell. Gideon watches as Grogu finally knocks them both out. Gideon notices how Grogu becomes tired after using the Force. Gideon taunts Grogu with the Darksaber before ordering a stormtrooper to stun him. Gideon orders Grogu shackled, and a message sent to Dr. Pershing that they have the donor. Season 2. Episode 7. Chapter 15, The Believer. In a junkyard, several inmates are dismantling Imperial ships. Inmate 34667, Mayfield, is called down by the guard droid to receive new instructions. Marshal Dune appears and remands Mayfield to her custody. Confused and reluctant, Mayfield follows Dune back to the Slave Eye, where he is greeted by Boba Fett, Fennec and Mando. Mayfield is being tasked by Mando to use his knowledge as a former Imperial soldier to help them locate Moff Gideon's base and save Grogu. The Slave Eye ascends. Mando asks Mayfield for the coordinates to Moff Gideon's ship. Mayfield tells him those can only be accessed by another Imperial vessel. He knows of an Imperial mining refinery on Morok. Mando tells Fett to head for Morok. Upon their arrival, Fett determines that the facility is refining rhydonium, a highly volatile and explosive substance. The refinery is also guarded by anti-aircraft weaponry as well as a platoon of security forces. Mando suggests they go in quietly. They arrive on the planet and locate a transport headed for the refinery. Mayfield tells June that her genetic signature will set off alarms as she is wanted by the ISB. Fennec realizes she would set off the alarm too. Mando asks Fett, who answers, "Let's just say they'll recognize my face." Mayfield goes in with Mando and June. They take out the transport's drivers and Mando takes the armor of one so as not to appear strange. Mayfield takes armor too, and makes fun of Mando. Mando leaves his Beskar armor with June. Mayfield continues as the driver and tries to talk to Mando. But Mando remains silent. Mayfield explains that there is a difference between Mando not being allowed to remove his helmet and not being allowed to show his face. Mando scoffs at the idea that he and Mayfield may have something in common. Ahead of them, another transport vessel is blown up. Pirates attack their vessel. Mando shoots at the pirates, who have thermal detonators. More pirates approach. Mando shoots them but runs out of ammo. He throws the gun and fights the pirates hand to hand. His stormtrooper armor is easily broken by their spears, but he is able to take some of them out. Mayfield notices that as the vessel increases in speed, the rhydonium becomes more volatile. So he must allow the pirates to take Mando. Two pirates manage to hold Mando down while one attaches a detonator to one of the rhydonium pieces. But Mando throws it just in time. Four more groups of pirates approach as they near a bridge. Those pirates are taken out by TIE fighters as June and Fennec arrive on a hilltop. Stormtroopers leave the base to assist the return of the rhydonium. Mando and Mayfield arrive at the refinery and are able to access a terminal in the officers' mess hall. But Mayfield recognizes his former commanding officer Valen Hess. Mayfield is afraid he will be made, and gives Mando the memory stick to download the coordinates, but warns that Mando must remove his helmet to be scanned, being that he is not in his Mandalorian armor, and he would only be revealing his face to the computer, and not a living thing. Mando takes the chance. As the memory stick finished downloading the location of Gideon's ship, Mando is approached by Hess, who questions him as to his designation. Mando plays it off as best he can before Mayfield arrives to explain. Hess recognizes them as the troopers who delivered the shipment of rhydonium. He invites them for a drink as they were the only convoy to deliver a shipment. Outside, June and Fennec prepare to infiltrate the base. After a brief conversation where he speaks his mind on the dealings of the Empire, Mayfield shoots Hess. He and Mando take out each officer and trooper in the room. Mayfield hands Mando a helmet, and tells him he never saw his face. Fennec and June hold off troopers as Fett flies the ship to pick them up. Mayfield fires at the rhydonium supply, taking out the refinery. TIE fighters approach the Slave Eye, but Fett easily outmaneuvers them and takes them out with a pulse grenade. Back on ground, June tells Mando it's too bad Mayfield died in the refinery explosion. Mayfield realizes he is free and goes off on his own. Mando gets the coordinates for Moff Gideon and departs. On Gideon's ship, a transmission is received from Mando, telling Gideon that he will soon have Grogu back. Season 2 Episode 8. Chapter 16, The Rescue. The Slave Eye is in pursuit of Dr. Pershing's Imperial shuttle. Boba Fett fires the ion cannon at the ship, disabling it. He sends a transmission telling the crew to prepare to be boarded. Marshal Cara Dune and Mando take out the pilots and kidnap Dr. Pershing. The Slave Eye lands on Trask. Fett and Mando enter a cantina and meet with Bo-Katan Kryze. When he tells her that Gideon took Grogu, she tells him they will not find him. Mando tells her that he has the coordinates of Gideon's ship. There is great tension towards Boba Fett. Mando tells her that Gideon's light cruiser could help her restore Mandalore. There is a brief scuffle between Fett and Koska Reeves. Bo-Katan agrees to help Mando in exchange for the ship. Mando agrees. Bo-Katan also wants the Darksaber so that she can retake Mandalore. Mando tells her that, as long as he gets Grogu back, she can have whatever she wants. On the Slave Eye, Dr. Pershing explains the dangers of approaching Gideon's ship. He also warns them of the Dark Troopers. He explains that the Dark Troopers are droids. Fennec asks where they are bivouacked. Pershing shows him where Grogu is being held. Bo-Katan lays out a plan to take the bridge, distracting Gideon's forces while Mando sneaks in to save Grogu. Bo-Katan demands Moff Gideon for herself, but Marshal Dune tells her she wants him alive. Bo-Katan repeats her sole interest in the Darksaber. The shuttle emerges from hyperspace carrying Mando, Dune, Fennec, Bo-Katan, and Reeves. With the Slave Eye in hot pursuit, Gideon launches TIE fighters to assist the shuttle, which Bo-Katan pilots erroneously to land. The shuttle docks as Fett pulls away and takes out the TIEs. The attack begins as Fennec, Dune, Bo-Katan and Reeves exit the shuttle. Guns are blazing. Gideon immediately orders the activation of the Dark Troopers. Mando quietly exits the shuttle, carrying the Beskar spear. The four continue to draw stormtroopers away from Grogu's cell as they approach the bridge. The Dark Troopers become fully charged. Fennec and Dune take out more troopers with help from the Mandalorians. Mando continues to Grogu's cell. The Dark Troopers activate and begin to walk toward the hall. Mando manages to stop all but one Dark Trooper from exiting the cell. It attacks him, but is unable to break through his Beskar armor. The Beskar spear proves to be a formidable weapon to defeat the trooper. And Mando opens the airlock to release the rest into space. The four arrive at the bridge and take out all troopers and officers. Gideon is nowhere to be found. Reeves disarms the weapons system as Mando takes out two stormtroopers guarding Grogu's cell. Gideon is waiting for him. With the Darksaber trained on Grogu, Gideon demands he drop his blaster and kick it over to him. Gideon explains the power of the Darksaber. He tells him that whoever wields it has power to rule Mandalore. Mando tells him he only wants Grogu. Gideon agrees, on the condition that Mando never return. As Mando agrees, Gideon attacks him with the Darksaber, which cannot cut through pure Beskar. Mando fights back using the Beskar spear against the Darksaber. Mando disarms Gideon and shackles him. He takes Grogu with Gideon and the Darksaber to the bridge. Mando attempts to give the Darksaber to Bo-Katan. However, Gideon tells him that it has to be won in battle in order for her to take the Darksaber from Mando. Mando attempts to yield it without fighting. But Gideon and Bo-Katan know he cannot do this. The Dark Troopers return to the base. Gideon finds a blaster and conceals it beneath his cape. Mando sets Grogu down so he can rest as the troopers return to the base. The troopers approach the bridge and begin to punch the door to break it down. Gideon informs them that the troopers will kill everyone except for he and Grogu. An X-Wing fighter approaches carrying a Jedi wielding a green lightsaber. The Dark Troopers identify it as a greater threat and collectively change priority. Grogu watches on the surveillance video as the Jedi easily takes out all troopers. Gideon attempts to shoot Reeves and takes aim at Grogu. But Mando blocks the shots and June knocks Gideon out. Grogu watches attentively as the Jedi continues through the ship. The Jedi continues taking out the Dark Troopers using the lightsaber and Force alike. Mando picks up Grogu and opens the doors. The Jedi enters. It is Luke Skywalker. He calls Grogu over. But Grogu is unsure. Luke tells Mando that he will protect Grogu. But he must master his abilities before they can be reunited. Mando picks up the child and takes off his helmet so that he may see his face. Mando tells him not to be afraid. He sets Grogu down. And Grogu is still unsure. R2-D2 rolls in. And Grogu is able to understand him. R2 talks to Grogu, who asks Luke to pick him up. And the three depart the bridge. Post-credits. On Tatooine. At Jabba's palace. Bib Fortuna sits the throne of his former master. Fennec enters and takes out all of his guards before freeing his female slave. Boba Fett follows and shoots Bib dead. Fett knocks his body off the throne and sits, with Fennec proudly drinking by his side, as his guard. The Book of Boba Fett, coming December 20